GMTK Game Jam 2022 is here, and I have 2 days to make a game. The theme is Roll of the Dice. My first reaction was like, hey, what if I make a Sokoban-like game where you literally roll the dice? You push cubes on buttons and you activate gameplay events by rolling up a certain number on the dice. And then you could expand that idea and add even more mechanics. Definitely won't become a problem later. Yes, this is the first idea I had. I just immediately knew that this is what I wanna make. I was totally aware that other people will come up with a similar idea. I've already seen people sharing their prototypes. If anything, it would be cool to compare my game to other similar games. But anyway, the goal here isn't to make the most unique game. The goal is to make a passable game from start to end. In 2 days. Corners were cut. My main source of inspiration was Block Source, a simple puzzle game where you guide a rectangular block into a square hole. The finicky movement of the rectangle is the source of the puzzles, and this is what I wanted to employ for my game. As the developer shapes the area for the player to roll the thing around, the player would have to find the exact set of moves you need to do to get the object in the exact position and rotation required. Surely this concept will translate to a dice just fine. There is only so many puzzles you can do with controlling a single dice, so I decided to make a dedicated playable character that pushes the dice instead of you being the dice. Now we can have several dices. Why does autocorrection say that this is an invalid word? Anyway, we can now also have activators and obstacles interacting with the player rather than the dice. And we have more options to restrict movement, because now it's not just the directions for a dice to move, but also the directions for the player character to approach a dice from. So, I needed a working prototype ASAP, and the main piece of this puzzle game is the dice itself. I went with Unreal, simply because this is the engine I already know and intend to make my full-length games with. It's not productive to learn a new engine in a 48-hour jam. Unfortunately, it means an in-browser version is out of the question. While I've expected it to lower the play rate significantly, and it kinda did, the main issue was people actually not being interested. People saw my game on the jam page. Not a lot, but decided to play something else instead. So, after cloning Unreal's built-in third-person template, it was time to make the dice model. Nah, it will take forever, I'm not an artist. This one looks nice. Credits to the Devil's Workshop for this dice model. To make the dice pushable, I've added 4 colliders to the dice, 1 on each side. Wait, 4 colliders? See, when the player pushes the dice from north, it should move south regardless of which side of the dice is facing up. So, instead of attaching the colliders to the dice model itself, I've attached them to the origin that stays unrotated. Here's how the dice moves. When you push the dice, it calculates the desired location, gets the vector between that and the dice's current location, divides that by 10, and adds the resulting vector to the dice's current position. This gives it this nice animation curve when it feels like friction is slowly taking over as the dice moves forward. Now let's use the same principle to make the rolling animation. This doesn't seem right. Of course, as you rotate the dice, the model's rotational axis also become rotated. I could use the global rotational axis, but... Wait! Why didn't I actually do that? It would solve the issue in 5 seconds. After spending 2 hours trying to make the dice rotate correctly, I've ended up with... What is this abomination? It somehow works, but I have no idea how. Moving on from that embarrassment, we need to know the value of the dice, aka which side is facing up. For each number, there are 4 other possible numbers we can roll to depending on the movement direction. In total, it's 24 possible combinations we have to select from as we move the dice. Just kidding, let's add an arrow component to each side and see which one is facing upwards. Then I've added 2 basic interactables, a pressure plate and a bridge that turns on when the correct side of the dice is facing up. My first idea was to tie the length of a bridge to the current value of the dice, but the layout of the dice was too restrictive to make good puzzles out of it. Instead, what if the entire bridge would activate when the dice shows the correct value? Or if a button is pressed? Or both at the same time? And the latter would be the basis for most puzzles. Actually, it won't, because I will not have time to make enough puzzles. And hold on! We have looped back to the original block source idea of getting the right state at the right place to win the level. Well, day 1 is about to end, so I have no other option but to stick with what we have. I was also thinking about introducing the conveyor belts and even made a level featuring them, but I failed to come up with a good puzzle, so ultimately the conveyors were scrapped. Let's talk about the game design challenges I have encountered while making this game. In block source, the block has only 2 states, while in my game it has 6. You can see all your options available in block source clearly, but here only 2 sides are visible at once, and one is currently active. While you could memorize the dice and the movement patterns, people usually give up and just move the dice back and forth until it happens to land on the desired side.
And this is what I end up doing these games like this. I'm just kind of rotating it over and over again. And I'm not really thinking strategically, because I just think if I just hit it enough times, I'll get it.
I could expose the third side of the dice by rotating the camera, but now it's unclear which direction is up or left. Another issue is that the gameplay process of making a cube face a certain direction isn't a deep mechanic. There's only so many puzzles you can do, which ask the player to make a certain side of the dice face upward until it becomes boring. For this reason, I'm not planning to make this into a full-length game. The main thing you would be doing in such a game is rotating the dice back and forth until it shows the right value, and for the reasons I've explained, it's not a fun process, dare I say, a frustrating one. After seeing other jam entries, which are far more finished and polished than mine, I've come to the realization: puzzle games don't really work as 48-hour jam entries. Yes, there are exceptions, but the process of making good puzzle levels takes too much time. Out of 7 levels the release version has, 4 are just tutorial levels, and 1 I actively hate, which made me program in the skip level button. There is also 3 other levels I struggled to design and had to cut away. What would suit such a jam better is something with just one stage you can replay over and over again, so that you could focus on the actual gameplay elements rather than individual levels. One advice I would give to anyone participating in a game jam is to learn how to build and package games in advance and test your game outside of the editor on a regular basis. For example, in a packaged game, the dice has been moving several times faster than normal. Turns out, the default tick rate is equal to the frame rate, meaning the more frames per second I have, the more tick events per second will be fired. And because I used absolute values instead of time delta, it made the cube movement speed dependent on the frame rate. With a few levels being done and only 8 hours left until the deadline, it's time to think about assets. I'm not an artist. In fact, I went with 3D specifically because if I have to make assets, It's easier for me to make a low poly model with a flat texture rather than drawing pixel art. But I would rather use someone else's assets available for free. And this time credits go to Quaternios for his platformer game kit I used for the environment and his animated monster pack I took the main character from. Credits for the pixelated post-processing shader go to Underscore. But hey, at least I've made some assets: the rock texture, the bridge materials, and the dice side detector indicator thing. Let's talk about these lines connecting the triggers to the bridge. They are purely cosmetic. They've been placed manually because it was faster than making a clever system that would place them for me. It's just simple rectangles, but the pixelated shader hides this fact very well. In fact, this shader has really saved the visuals, because without it things look barren, cheap, unfinished, whatever. You might be wondering how I've made the outline scene around the dice. Like this. Yes, it's just an inverse cube with a black texture. That's it. It's called the inverted hull method, and while it has its issues, especially with complex models, it's a nice and quick drop-in solution perfect for a game jam, or a prototype of a full-length game. So, with the game being wrapped up, uploaded, and eventually scored, where does it leave me in the end? I'm obviously glad that I finished a game, let alone in 48 hours. But I focused too much on that and kinda missed the point. I haven't even tried to spin the theme into something fun and original. Yes, I have created something that functions and looks like a game rather than an Unreal template. But it's not something I would recommend playing for the sake of having fun. If anything, this video about making that game has far more value than the game itself because of the knowledge and challenges I have encountered during development. Also, this whole week I've spent learning Unreal, and the weekend spent on the jam itself, it's a week not spent on something people would actually care about, like my Minecraft mods. With nearly 200,000 downloads in total, it's reasonable to say that people enjoy my mods and would like to see more. And something might be brewing. Let's hope it will be announced soon. Subscribe for the upcoming announcements. Also, I am the creator of Versus Axe and Hail mode for TF2, and I have stories to tell about it.